and not a phantom.
Yeah, I am a phantom.
Mm.
I'm like a shade.
What? Man, I'm gonna have to bind you with some elemental magics to the earth. So today we're talking about more Stoicism, but we decided to kind of change what we're doing. Instead of reading through the entire meditations, we kind of wanted to work our way through um, a compilation of Seneca's works on anger. Because I say a compilation because if you read the introduction to the text, it actually talks about how James Romm's book is actually, it pulls from different sources that
Right.
talk about anger. It doesn't just translate, on ire or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I got about halfway through it personally, and then I just kind of forgot. Not that I didn't think it was important, but now I don't have to read it by myself because we're reading it together. And
Yeah.
we'll close out the stream from this point forward until we finish the book with a short excerpt from the Meditations of Marco Aurelio.
Yeah. Or
So,
Marcus Aurelius, if you didn't understand those words.
oh, didn't they probably thought I got his name wrong.
Yeah.
I was just speaking Conqueror.
Yeah.
All right, dudes. Oh wait, I have to share the thing on the screen, right?
Right.
Okay, and then I got to turn off the thing so y'all can see the whole thing. And then I don't know how we're gonna divide this, so I guess we'll just figure it out as we go along.
I vote to read if you don't.
You vote to read?
Yeah.
You can, yeah.
All right. So this is kind of like a little introductory paragraph to what we're about to read. It's short, so I'll just read it and then continue. So Seneca frames his essay on anger as a letter to his older brother, Novatus, a man who, like Seneca himself, had gone into politics and had become a senator. He would later change his name to Gallio after being adopted by a wealthy patron of that name, and he appears as Gallio in the biblical book of Acts as the Roman governor of Greece, who dealt with Apostle Paul in Corinth. The single addressee is only a fiction, however, for the essay is really directed at Seneca's fellow elite Romans and can be applied even more widely today. So you urged me, Novatus, to write about the way in which anger can be softened, and I think you are right to be most frightened of this emotion, the ugliest and most savage of all emotions. The others have some measure of peace and quiet in them, but this one rages in turmoil and furious movement, with an eagerness hardly human, for pain, weapons, blood, and torture, until it harms others while discarding its own good. It rushes to arms and greedily seeks a vengeance that will only drag the avenger down with it. Some wise men have called anger a brief madness. In equal degrees, it is unable to govern itself. Forgetful of decorum, ignorant of friendships, obstinate, and intent on finishing what it begins. Deaf to reason and advice, stirred up by empty provocations, unsuited to distinguishing what's just and true. It resembles nothing so much as a collapsing building that breaks apart upon that which it crushes. But to understand that those in the grips of anger are not sane, look at how they present themselves. For just as madness shows clear signs, a brash and threatening expression, an unhappy face, a wrinkled forehead, an agitated gait, nervous hands, changed skin color, rapid and heavy breathing, just so angry people display the same signs. Their eyes burn and flash, their whole face reddens with blood that boils up from their innermost organs. Their lips tremble, their teeth clench, their hair bristles and stands on end, their breath becomes labored and gasping, cracking knuckles and twisting limbs, sighs and groans, and speech broken off by unintelligible noises. Hands smashed together, feet pounding the earth, body agitated all over, and brandishing anger's mighty threats, an aspect foul, to look on, and disgusting as the afflicted contort themselves and grow swollen. You'll be hard put to say which is the better word for this fault, hateful or monstrous.
How true do you still find this description of anger today? I still think it's pretty damn accurate.
Yeah, I would say so.
And like, I know for me personally, like, you know, when he said anger always wants to finish what it begins.
Right.
Another way of putting that is like when you're angry, the only thing you care about, like it's ignorant of friendship, it's ignorant of decorum, and like all other sorts of things, right?
Right.
And like I know when I was most angry as a person, I would call that chronic anger, right? Because it never really went away. All I wanted to do was be right. I didn't give a shit what other people thought. I would pretend I gave a shit, and then I would smash them later.
Yeah.
And like that's just what anger does. And like anger most of the time is a temporary thing, but when you nurture it, like because of like past hurts and stuff like that, it contorts into temperament.
Yeah.
Of someone who doesn't care about other people's feelings, doesn't care about what other people think, doesn't care about what other people need. It just wants to prove that their negative view of the world is 100% correct 100% of the time, like everything else be damned.
Right.
Including friendship, by the way. So most of these people end up alone if they don't find some remedy to this, which is why we both wanted to read this book.
Yeah, it's important because anger can screw up a lot of things. You think it makes you feel justified.
And for the record, we deal with this shit too with each other because, like we both said, but like if I ever get that pissed off, just hang up on me.
Yeah.
Because like, dude, there have been times when we both gotten stuck, and it's like, wait, why the hell am I doing this? Like, I gotta
So
stop.
yeah, the Star Wars version of anger is based off this Greek version of anger is destructive, and
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Yeah, it doesn't really have a positive benefit.
People think so.
Yeah.
But no, it doesn't. I'm one of the I was one of the angriest people I know. Second only to combat veterans with PTSD and anger blackouts.
Right.
And there is no use for anger outside of survival. That's it. And I mean like immediate survival, not like this long term, like, oh, I don't have the resources to do what I mean, a dude is trying to kill you and you're trying to live.
Yeah.
Use whatever you got.
Yeah, I think also the language that we use to define these terms is also important because, in a heated debate or an argument, you could get angry, but also like there's a point where the emotions help you focus, but there comes a point where you just lose control, and then in my head, I kind of call that anger.
Right. So I like to think of the Avatar. Right? Like Zuko learned firebending through hatred. Like his entire his entire firebending prowess was fueled by his desire to return home, vindicate himself, and his hatred of the Avatar. That was it. And then when Aang tried to learn firebending the first time from this retired general dude, like, he told Aang that, if fire is like anger, it burns indiscriminately if you're not careful with it. So even if you don't start out meaning to destroy things, you eventually will. Yeah. I don't know why the Avatar is such a good example of a lot of things. Yeah, my bad. Keep going. I just wanted to.
Other things can be hidden away and nurtured in secret, but anger announces itself and comes out onto the face. The greater its degree, the more openly it seethes. Don't you see how all animals, as soon as they have reared up to inflict harm, send forth signals ahead of the attack? How their entire bodies abandon their accustomed calm appearance and whet the edge of their wildness. Boars foam at the mouth, sharpening their tusks by rubbing. Bulls toss their horns in the empty air, scattering sand with their hooves. Lions roar, prodded snakes puff up their necks, and the faces of rabid dogs become a woeful sight. No animal is so fearsome, so noxious in nature that the onset of new savagery does not show itself as soon as anger has entered in. Of course, I'm aware that other emotions are also hard to hide, and that lust and fear and bravery too give signs of their presence and can be perceived. Indeed, there's no intense arousal that enters us without altering our expressions in some way. Then what's the difference? This, while other feelings stand out, this one towers. But if you truly want to examine its effects, the damages it causes, I say that no plague has done more harm to humankind. You'll see slaughters, poisons, mutual mudslinging of litigants, wreckage of cities, extinctions of whole races, lives of leading men sold at public auction, torches touched to buildings, flames not contained within walls, but held by an empty host, gleaming over vast spans of territory. Look at the foundation stones of the noblest cities, now barely visible. Anger toppled them. Look at the wastelands that stretch empty for many miles, without an inhabitant. Anger stripped them clean. Look at leaders preserved in memory as examples of evil fate. Anger stabbed this one in his own bed, struck that one down amid the sacred rites of the table, mangled another as the courts and the crowded forum watched, ordered one to offer his blood to his son's parricide, another to bare his royal neck to a slave's hand, another to split his limbs apart on the cross. And these are only the tortures of individuals. What if, looking past those whom anger has scorched one by one, you could glimpse assemblies hacked by the sword, mobs cut to pieces by soldiers sent against them, whole peoples condemned to die through indiscriminate slaughter? Oh, and it says, there is a gap in the transmitted Latin text following the above sentence. As we know from other sources, in the missing text, Seneca defined anger as a desire to punish a real or perceived wrong. That definition will be important in his later discussion of how anger can be prevented or moderated. So, do you want to say something before I continue?
I mean, so back, I forgot earlier that I kind of wanted to mention, like, there's a difference between the physiological feelings that lead to anger and anger itself. Kind of like you had mentioned before, how you, like in a debate, you can get a little angry, but if you control it, it can help you focus.
Yeah.
Or you can feel like you're getting a little angry, but that helps you focus. But when you lose control of it, that's anger.
Yeah.
The Stoics would call the physiological sensations that accompany arousal a proto-passion.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's not an emotion in itself, it's a natural physiological reaction.
Right.
So, like, they would all say, regardless of how severe they lean one way or the other on certain things, that learning to recognize these proto-passions or warning signs of these emotions that can completely take you over is key.
Yes.
And I particularly like here that he talks about ruined cities and like all these individual tortures. Like they're all just manifestations of anger. Like,
oh yeah, World War I started in anger.
Yeah, I kind of want to like, okay, so because I can hear all my weird activist friends like yelling at me, being like, "Oh, you trying to tell me I shouldn't be angry at this or I shouldn't be angry at that?" I'm like, dude, do what you do. If you think it's productive, I can't change your mind.
Right.
I've tried. But what I will say is that when you fight from nothing but a place of hurt. Notice my exact words, nothing but a place of hurt and needing to vindicate your experience, that is not going to make the world better.
Right.
If you're trying to heal by making the world a better place, more power to you. But if you're just trying to air your own grievances to make yourself feel more justified in perpetuating the same vitriol just from the opposite side of the political fence that you accuse other people of hurling at you, you're not doing anything different.
Right.
That's typically why I stay out of those debates these days, because I can get carried away, and it's not good for me. Hey, yeah, I'm not perfect at all. Like, nowhere near. No, like half the time, like when it comes to anger, I don't think I'm even that great at managing it. Although I'll admit that I'm way better than I was a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so take that for what it's worth. I just like, you have to recognize that this is always going to be a struggle because we're human.
Yeah.
People feel things. No one's advocating don't feel. It's just choose the course of action that is going to be most productive.
Yep.
Go ahead.
But one might ask, even if anger is unnatural, should we adopt it because it's useful? After all, it lifts and gives spur to the spirits, and courage achieves no great military feat without it. That is, if its fire is not lit underneath us, and its goad does not provoke the bold and send them into perils. Thus, some men think it valuable to moderate anger rather than set it aside, to force it to conform to a healthy measure and restrain its overflows, to hold on to that part without which action grows weak, and the force and energy of the mind is dissipated. First, however, it's easier to shut out harmful things than to govern them, easier to deny them entry than to moderate them once they have entered. Once they've established residence, they become more powerful than their overseer, and do not accept retrenchment or abatement. That is why reason itself, to which the reins are entrusted, stays potent, only so long as it's kept apart from the passions. If it mingles and pollutes itself with them, it can no longer restrain that which it formerly could have rebuffed. Once shaken and overthrown, the mind becomes a slave to that which drives it. In some cases, though, the onset of things is in our control. That which follows drags us along by its momentum, and allows us no step backward. Just as bodies in free fall have no power over themselves and cannot resist or slow their descent, but the unstoppable down crush cuts off every thought and regret, and they cannot help arriving at a place where they once could have not arrived. So the mind, if it launches itself into anger or love or the other emotions, has no chance to check its impetus. Its own gravity and the sloping nature of the vices naturally seizes it and pulls it down to the bottom. It is best to repel instantly the first pricklings of anger, to stamp out its very seedlings, to take pains not to be drawn in, for once it has knocked us off course, the return to health and safety is difficult. No space is left for reason once passion has been ushered in and given jurisdiction. From that point on, it will do what it wants, not what you allow. No, the foe must be fended off at the farthest borders, as it were. Once it has entered and made its way through your gates, it takes its prisoners and grants no terms. The mind is no longer a thing set apart, watching the passions from a distance to stop them from going further than they should. The mind itself now, weakened and betrayed to the enemy, is changed into a passion and cannot recover its helpfulness and healthful power.
I have a good analogy.
Yeah.
So I always find it funny when I do this by accident, right? But I basically just talked about what this just said.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know. I think we've read too much of this. I'm just kidding.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to use a messed up analogy, right? Because I think like people are going to understand it better if I don't use an emotion as an example. So let's say you have a cup of water, right?
Right.
And somebody, like you drink the clean cup, there's another glass that's clean and hasn't, nobody's had it yet. And Like somebody comes along and drops just like 6 drops of pee, like really dark pee in the water. Would you let someone come along and drink it after? Would that be good for you to do after somebody's peed in the other glass of water? That's basically what Seneca's talking about. Like once you give it entry, you can't necessarily control what happens.
Yeah.
So it's better to deal with it as it comes than to like try to suppress most of it and let a little bit out because you think it's useful.
Yeah.
I've never, like in my life, seen a use for anger that actually ended up constructive.
Yeah.
I've seen angry people be part of protest groups that eventually had a successful mission,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not because of the angry individuals themselves. It's because enough people had the wherewithal to keep the movement and the momentum going forward than to be sidetracked by
Yeah.
other things.
And those same angry individuals are still angry individuals.
Yeah.
So can you really say that they were useful at all?
I would say no.
Because that anger just gonna sit there, and they're going to harm people around them
Yeah.
and themselves.
I mean, we both did that.
Yeah.
I mean, also, we both have varying forms of depression. So, like, that operates very much the same way. Like, if you've ever spent a significant amount of time with somebody with depression,
Mm-hmm.
you'll notice that what you continually feed is what has the most control over the what you think. And when we learned to stop doing that, like not saying we never get depressed anymore, because
Yeah.
like I talked about, it's really a chemical thing too. It's not just it's better, but it's not like. But I noticed like depression hasn't gotten anywhere near as severe as it used to be.
Yeah.
Given that I now know how to feed my brain other things other than oh you're a piece of crap or oh the world is shit and stuff like that. Because all you're doing is pouring gasoline on a fire at that point. Then it's the train to suicide town. Like that's what it is. And that's not okay, dudes. Anger can lead to some very disastrous consequences, like whether it's given over to the external world outside yourself or you turn it inward. Either way, it's equally destructive. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I can say that part of the reason I had such huge issues with self-esteem is because like I had turned so much of that anger in on myself.
Yeah.
And I believed everything my brain said about me that I had conditioned myself to think was true. And dude, it was a long road, but that's also a form of anger. And I don't think anybody could ever tell me that anger is productive.
Right.
Anything you want to add, dude?
I think you said it best.
You sure you don't want to add a little more? Mm-hmm.
We'll see after I read some more.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Man, you like reading? All right, cool. What then?
What then? Someone says. Does a good man not get angry, even if he watches his father get killed or his mother raped? He won't get angry, but he'll avenge them or he'll protect them. Why are you afraid that duty alone, without anger's help, will be too little motivation for him? But say this in the same way. What's that? When he beholds his father or son cut to pieces, won't the good man weep? Won't his mind desert him? The good man will carry out his duties without fear or turmoil. He'll act in a manner worthy of a good man, such that he'll do nothing unworthy of a man. My father's being killed, I'll defend him. He has been killed, I'll avenge him, but because it's right, not because I'm grieved. To get angry on behalf of one's kin is the mark of a weak mind, not a loyal one. It is this that is noble and worthy, for a defender to act on behalf of his parents, children, and friends, with his duty leading him on, willingly, judiciously, and with foresight, not driven and raging. There is no emotion more eager for vengeance than anger, and for that very reason none less suited to the taking of vengeance. Over hasty and heedless, like every greedy desire, it blocks itself on the way to where it is rushing. To someone doling out punishment, nothing is less suitable than anger. A penalty is more useful for correction when the judgment imposing it is more sound. Thus it was that Socrates said to his slave, I would beat you if I weren't angry. He postponed punishment of the slave to a saner moment. At that time, he reproached himself. So whose passions can ever be kept moderate? Even Socrates did not dare surrender to anger.
You got something to say?
That line about punishment and all that is interesting because people associate punishment with, anger. Or, like you should be angry when you're doling out punishment. Some people seem to go overboard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's, I'm not saying everyone does it, but,
Many do.
yeah. Like, punishing someone for a fault they did, whether it's something at work or it's a familial thing or something like that, is often laden with guilt, anger, and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I had a friend tell me yesterday, like she was working at a tanning salon at one point, and one of the things they had to do was they had this checklist of like all the things you're supposed to do when you're inviting a customer to use the tanning machine or whatever. Like they do that for the managers, and the manager didn't particularly like my friend, so when it came time for that checkup, um the manager was just straight up fired her because she forgot to let her know that she's supposed to leave tanning lotion on her hands. But the thing is, like with someone else, she would just let it go. She just didn't like my friend, and so she used that as an opportunity to fire her. So it's not just anger, it could be disdain or something like that. When you have those emotions dictating how you run operations or how you relate to people, that I would say that's also like messing it up. Like you're not doing it out of duty, you're not doing it out of like reason. Like, oh, like I would only fire someone in that position if they consistently messed up. But this was only like the first time.
Right. Yeah, that's really messed up, dude.
So yeah, the concept of doling out punishment and all that, I think, needs to be reworked because I don't think, as a species, we haven't really developed a good relationship with it.
No.
Because yeah, there's a place for critique and letting people know, like, oh, this is where you're messing up, but here's how you can do it better. Or, oh, I didn't really like how you went about that, like, and here's the reasons why. Right. Even if they disagree, like, there is a point where you guys can come to an understanding.
Just putting that out there is, like, really important to me.
Yeah, but so many people have used that ability to punish in order to justify their position or to justify why they're picking on you or something like that. Yeah. Or why they ignore you.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's very important, and it's something that we haven't learned how to use.
No, I think we've been acculturated to think that negative reinforcement is the best way to train.
Oh yeah, you could see that in the beginnings of psychology and behaviorism too.
Yeah,
So it's deeply entrenched in our psyches, I feel.
That's why, like, I like how Seneca's like, oh, if you're gonna do it, don't do it out of anger.
Yeah, exactly. I think about when you're punishing children too.
Like, because I have seen firsthand parents that, like, I mean, I don't want to get into the debate about spanking, but I've seen parents go from spanking their kids to like going way overboard, and I'm like, yo, you need to stop.
Yeah.
Like, you need to stop now, because all
Mm,
you're doing is saying the same shit over and over while your hands just absent-mindedly moving.
yeah.
They're like, don't fucking tell me how to raise my. I'm like, dude, do you really want to get into that? Because I'm not afraid of you, dude.
Hmm.
I'm not a 3-year-old. I mean, yeah, negative reinforcement is not the only way. I'm just gonna say that. But if you're gonna use it at all, don't use it when you're angry. Anger warps everything you do. Man, I sound like Yoda. What's going on?
Yeah.
I never thought I would agree with that, but like when I was 20, I didn't think I'd agree, but I agree. Should I read, or you gonna keep reading, or what do you want to do? How do you want to go?
I was wondering how long do you want to keep going?
I feel, like one more, and then a passage from Marcus Aurelius, and then
Sure. I'll read it.
okay.
All right. And we must not even suppose that anger contributes in any way to greatness. That's not greatness, but mere swelling. Just as a disease in bodies distended by an excess of unhealthy fluid is not growth, but a noxious overflow. Everyone who's transported beyond mortal thinking by an insane mind believes he's breathing in something elevated and sublime. But there's nothing firm underneath. Things that grow without foundations are likely to slide into ruin. Anger has nothing on which it can lean. It arises from nothing steady or durable. What then? Don't words that seem to have come from a great mind issue forth from angry people? No, rather, from those who don't know what true greatness is, just like that dread and hateful expression. Let them hate so long as they fear. Do you think that was spoken by a great spirit? You're wrong. That was not greatness, but monstrosity. There is no reason to trust the words of angry people, which make loud and menacing noise despite the great timidity of the mind that lies beneath. There is no reason to regard as true that phrase found in the works of Livy, a most learned author, a man of great more than good nature. Those things can't be separated. Either his nature was good as well, or it wasn't great, since I know greatness of soul to be something unshakable, solid to the core, just and firm from the bottom up, such that it can't exist in evil natures. Sure, terrible and turbulent and lethal things can exist, but they won't have greatness, the foundation of which is strength and goodness. They will give the illusion of greatness with their speech, their effort, and all their external show. They will shout out something that you might think belongs to a great mind, like Caligula, angered at the sky because its clamor interrupted the pantomimes, which he was more eagerly mimicking than watching. And because his rebels were terrorized by thunderbolts entirely too poorly aimed, he summoned Jupiter to battle, and when there was no let-up, he declaimed that famous line of Homer's, "You throw me or I'll throw you." What madness that was! Either he thought he couldn't be harmed even by Jupiter himself, or he thought that he could harm even Jupiter. I imagine that his utterance added to the impetus of the minds of those who conspired to kill him, for it seemed the height of forbearance to put up with a man who couldn't put up with Jupiter.
Don't we always think ourselves bigger than we are when we're angry?
Yeah.
That's kind of funny, man. So at this point in time, we're both going to pick one random selection from this lovely thing right here. This is the Gregory Hayes translation of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, and we will read them out loud and maybe say something about them, depending on what it provokes.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one.
Yeah, I have one too.
Mine is on page 77, book 6, number 38.
Which one? 38?
Yeah. And then what's yours?
It's page 28, number 3.
I went too far back. Number 3, right?
Yeah.
All right. Since yours is, chronologically sooner, you can go first.
Hippocrates killed many illnesses and then fell ill and died. The Chaldeans predicted the deaths of many others. In due course, their own hour arrived. Alexander, Pompey, Caesar, who utterly destroyed so many cities, cut down so many thousand foot and horse in battle, they too departed this life. Heraclitus often told us the world would end in fire, but it was moisture that carried him off. He died smeared with cow shit. Democritus was killed by ordinary vermin, Socrates by the humankind. And you boarded, you set sail, you've made the passage. Time to disembark. If it's for another life, well, there's nowhere without gods on that side either. If to nothingness, then you no longer have to put up with pain and pleasure, or go on dancing attendance on this battered crate, your body, so much inferior to that which serves it. One is mind and spirit, the other earth and garbage.
Why'd you pick that one?
I actually didn't even see the last line, so I just read the first paragraph and I was like, all right, yeah, that works.
I like that one.
Yes, this body will one day return to dust.
Yeah. So mine, it says, keep reminding yourself of the way things are connected, of their interrelatedness, all things that are implicated in one another and in sympathy with each other. This event is the consequence of some other one. Things push and pull on each other and breathe together and are one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess I'm predisposed to trying to figure out how things are interrelated more than most people.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always found it a useful reminder that nothing happens in isolation.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, like, just because I'm saying all things are interconnected and, like, cause and effect and all that doesn't mean that we don't have agency. We just have to be aware of how our use of that agency affects other things.
Yeah.
Some things that they affect, we might initially think had nothing to do with us. But when you look in retrospect, as they say, hindsight being 20/20 and all that,
Right.
you often see the ways that you affect a situation more clearly after the fact. So I don't know, to me, I think it's better to kind of like try to train ourselves to project ahead and make the most conscientious decisions possible now.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
yeah.
uh, it's another thing we all need to understand is that concept of agency in our lives, because and how that is not really a contradiction against the idea that things are kind of deterministic, as in like there are some things you really can't change that are external to us. We can only just really watch as it happens. But what we can do is, and I think all the philosophies that are concerned with that, not just Stoicism, but like Buddhism and Taoism or Zen, if you can realize like where you fit within the vast web and how you can contribute and how you can respond to what's happening, the more better off you'll be and the more control you'll have over yourself.
Yeah.
When those events happen, like a death in the family, or someone disrespects you and calls you something, like all of that, those things are bound to happen. It's just how do you respond to that? And that's what I think is meant by agency.
Yep.
Yeah. So I kind of think about it in terms of like video game metaphors. But like when you play a game, you're bound by those rules and systems. So, but the system does give you a sense of agency, and it asks you how do you respond to these obstacles and these rules that are set, which at first seem set against you, but once you understand them, you can learn to use them. Like you can learn to like use them to your advantage. I feel the same applies to life as well, and I think that's what the Stoics realized, living 2,000 odd years ago.
I vaguely remember something along the line, along your point of agency, in the form of a psychological study where they took two groups of people going through some shit, right?
Yeah.
And on the one side, they had them engage in a journaling activity that just sort of explained the situation as they saw it,
Mm-hmm.
period. Like in a journal, like write it out as a narrative.
Yeah.
And then um, the other group was given the instruction to try to write a narrative while being conscious of how they were an active participant in both that situation and in their decision to part from that situation. And what they found was um, that people who wrote the narrative with their own agency in mind processed that event far more efficiently than those who took on what we have termed the victim mentality, where they felt they had no agency and
Yeah.
it just happened to them.
Yeah.
So, agency and the feeling of agency is important. Even though sometimes I understand some of y'all are going to be like, well, real agency is just an illusion. I'm like, all right, but it's a productive fiction.
Yeah.
So use it. So basically, remember that eventually we'll all be dead, and like none of the things we worry about will matter.
Yeah.
And the only life we have is the one we have right now. At least that's the one we know we have. So
Right.
try to make it one that when you look back at it, you can actually take some pride and dignity in it. That's really all most of us want anyway. I mean, that's a good takeaway for those two Marcus Aurelius things.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, dudes. Well, fucking,
Yep.
yeah. See y'all next week.
Yep. See you next week.
Have a good day.
Yeah. See you then.